Well, hello again to everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Charles Naton, your friendly guide helping you to navigate the shadowy swamp that is the modern British state. Now, I have been away for quite some time. I've not been posting any videos up as I've had some important matters to attend to, and also I've been giving the channel a bit of an overhaul and improving the visuals, so unfortunately you don't get to look at my gorgeous Fizzog anymore. But we can be using that space to represent information and deliver more value to you, the viewer. So here we go with the new format. And I know it's starting on a subject that a lot of people who'd be interested in this channel want to know more about, and that's the ongoing debacle that is the HS2 project. On the 19th of May, Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander stood up in the House of Commons and, to the surprise of absolutely nobody in the entire world, announced that the estimated costs for the ongoing HS2 debacle would now be considerably higher than previously thought. Just to put some meat on those bones, the estimated costs for the half of the project that's alleged to be completed, but time will tell, now run between 87.7 and 102.7 billion pounds. And it's not expected to start its slower service between London and Birmingham anywhere between mid-2036 and late 2039. Following that, there was the usual harumphing in the House, of course, and the usual announcements blaming previous governments and HS2 Limited, that's the delivery company, for a litany of failures in the past. Amongst all the shouts of derision, though, was anyone really surprised at yet another spectacular failure of any government to deliver a major project? With all this time and money having been wasted, and serious question marks over whether any trains will ever run on this boondoggle of a railway line, it's important to figure out who's who, who's responsible for what, and who's making the decisions and writing the checks. As Heidi Alexander was quick to point out in the House of Commons, the body charged with delivering this high-speed 2 railway is in fact a limited company. It's a company referred to as HS2 Limited, although its full name is High Speed 2 brackets HS2 Limited. It's a limited company, it's registered at Companies House, but don't let that fool you into thinking that it's a normal limited company in the way that we would usually understand the phrase. In fact, its structure is quite different. For a start, it's only got one shareholder, and that shareholder is the Secretary of State for Transport, whoever that happens to be. And HS2 doesn't have any customers. It doesn't sell anything in order to get its money. It doesn't provide goods or services to anyone in order to get its income. In case you haven't guessed, it actually gets its money directly from the government. It's funded entirely by something called a grant in aid, which is a fancy way of saying it's directly funded by the Department of Transport, which of course means it's funded by the taxpayer, because where's the DOT get its money from? Well, where all government departments get their money from the taxpayer, and the rest is made up from borrowing, which, by the way, the taxpayer has to pay interest on. But we'll not get into that can of worms right now. So it is reasonable to ask whether HS2 Limited is in fact a company in the commonly understood sense of the word, or whether it is in fact a de facto very, very expensive quango. Looking at who's in charge and who writes the checks and who calls the shots, I would say it's a quango in all but name. And that perhaps is our first clue as to why it's been such a monumental screw-up. Now, this de facto quango has been very busy writing checks for lots of different contractors and other organisations, but we'll get into that in a later video. Right now, let's just get some broad numbers, because although we know how much this project is estimated to cost, it would be interesting to find out how much it's actually cost the UK taxpayer so far. And luckily, we can find that information out because HS2 Limited is a company and it produces accounts. So let's have a look and see just how much this huge white elephant that I wonder will ever see a train on its tracks has cost us so far. I hope you're all sitting down, because you ought to be when you look at these numbers. Incorporated in January 2009, HS2 Limited's budget was fairly modest, relatively speaking, in the earlier years. This is because in its earlier years it wasn't actually charged with delivering, or rather finding and paying contractors to deliver, an actual railway line. It was mostly concerned with feasibility studies, environmental surveys, and looking at proposed and alternative routes and making recommendations to ministers. So you can see in its early years, 9.5, 14.6, and then jumping quite dramatically to nearly 35 million in 2011 to 2012. But then, as the routes are approved and time goes on, HS2 Limited's remit changes and it is then charged with delivering the railway line. Now obviously all those quangocrats and civil servants aren't going to be out there with picks and shovels themselves, so that means they have to find contractors to do that work, and that's something we'll get into in another video. But you can see here 2013 to 14 the costs shot up to £208 million, although there was a change to their accounting standards in that year. So despite a slight fall the following year, you can see that the costs continue their inexorable upward march, reaching just shy of £500 million in 2016 to 17. And that's money spent, by the way. That's not estimates or projections. That is, as they say, money we have the receipts for. And suddenly 17 to 18 it's 1.16 billion, and then 2018 to 19 over 2 billion, and so on and so forth. You can see how the balloon has been expanding at a seemingly unstoppable rate, and no one seems able or willing to curtail these costs or pull the plug and cancel the whole project, which will probably have some cancellation fees, but I wonder, would it actually be cheaper in the long run? Who knows? But what we do know for sure is with the completion of the 24 to 25 figures, we have a total spent of £38,323,650,000, with half the project cancelled, the rest of it not going to start running for at least 10 more years, and not a single train in sight, if we ever do see one. So that's where we are right now. In the next video, we're going to be looking at how we actually got here and where is all this money been going. As depressing as it might be, I hope you found this video informative. So please like, subscribe, comment, share. It helps for people to know what's really going on, not what estimates say and what government departments tell us, but the actual numbers there in black and white. Because remember, our ignorance is their power. Stay tuned to the channel and I'll see you all again soon. Bye bye for now.